Hey everyone, this is the Clear Space Podcast, episode number 3. And this is all about the book by Michael Hyatt called Free to Focus. So it's a total productivity system to achieve more by doing less. And some of the concepts are based on our previous podcasts that we discussed, like GTD, Getting Things Done methodology, as well as the deep work. And today, Jesper is going to take you on the journey all about the book and going in much more detail on the things that he's discovered there. Right. So over to you, Jesper.
Great. Thanks, Yanis. So like Yanis said, we're going to be talking about the book by Michael Hyatt today called Free to Focus. Just for a brief agenda of what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to run through the 3 steps of the book, which are stop, cut, and act. So these are the 3 things that generally we want to focus on while we are trying to optimize our work lives for focus. So these, we have 3 components. So within the first step, stop, we're going to be formulating, evaluating, and rejuvenating. So this starts off with deciding what we want to do. And once we know what we want to do, we can determine our course. So how we want to proceed and what the best things for us to focus on are. And then, of course, we need to be able to rejuvenate our minds and bodies. We can't just always be work, work, work. We also have to take the time to kind of take a step back, just relax. And the productivity is more than just go, go, go.
I can relate.
Yeah, I think we all can. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So for the second step, we're going to be talking about cutting. So this is all about, just not doing work that you know that you shouldn't be doing. You've already determined your course in the first step. So when it comes to cutting, we're going to focus on eliminating. So this is flexing your no muscle, as he says in the book. So just learning how to say no effectively and respectfully. It's also about automating. So how you can subtract yourself from the equation, and then also delegating. And this is all about cloning yourself. So you can find somebody who maybe is more appropriate or actually more joyful about doing the things that, we'll discuss this in later in the podcast. But some people actually really want to do the things that you hate doing. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in the third step, we have act. So this is where we actually finally get to action. This is where we consolidate. So we plan our ideal week. So beforehand, rather than getting kind of strung along with all the responsibilities that we have in the week, we have an idea of what we should be working on each day and how we would ideally like to structure out our weeks. We are also designating, so prioritizing our top tasks, like what we should be doing. And then finally, we are activating. So this will be focusing on how we can beat interruptions and distractions. So this is the overall agenda for what we're going to be discussing today.
Okay, let's dive in it.
Nice.
Into it.
So we've already mentioned this, but just a brief background of like the book. This is how it looks, Free to Focus by Michael Hyatt. As Yanis mentioned, it's a total productivity system to achieve more by doing less. And as I mentioned in the last slide, it really comes down to 9 different components that we can split out into 3 different steps. So we're stopping, we're cutting, and we're acting. So let's dive in. So just before we actually touch on those topics, just a brief kind of introduction to why we need to focus, because I think it's becoming more and more important that we actually learn how to focus. As we discussed in like our last podcast episode on deep work, like people who are able to focus are the ones who are able to deliver the best results. Those are the people who are like always looking at kind of innovating, developing, like learning new things. And the reason is that they're able to focus so much more than maybe someone else in the same field. So in terms of being free to focus, why we need to do that is because most of us live life inside the distraction economy. And that's what we kind of have in this first diagram. So we're all kind of in this distracted space where the internet is just constantly bugging us. We're getting emails at all hours of the day. If we look at our phones during work, we have notifications that might be popping up all the time. And all these little things are actually just us being connected to this thing that our brains aren't ready to handle. So essentially, what we're seeing is a decrease in attention because of this. We're seeing increased stress because of all this distraction. Like we can't focus on one thing at a time. We're seeing decreased productivity. And I think one of the kind of more romantic ways to put it is that we're seeing unexplored dreams and talents. We're seeing people who are just kind of getting roped along with what other people need from them, who aren't really taking the time to step back and say, this is what needs to be done. This is what I want to do. This is what like I think should be done. And we have a really cool quote here by Oliver Berkman. And it says, what will your life have been in the end, but the sum total of everything you spent it focusing on? So this is a quote that he mentions in the book. And I totally, like, if you look at the whole mind, body, spirit, I definitely think mind comes down to focus, like what is actually in your mind at all times. That's what we focus on.
And the last bit, like unexplored dreams, right, from what I understand, it refers to just people living other people's lives or other people's ideas of how life should be done, just because we're just so distracted and immersed in just random stuff from everywhere, social media, friends, family, news, all that. Is that what you mean?
Sure. And I think the book mentions it specifically to like your work life. So if somebody asks you for like your help on something, it comes down to a lot of different things, but I think maybe the second step in terms of cutting would be really important. So like knowing when you want to say no and not just really agreeing to kind of everything just because somebody asked you to do it. It really comes down to knowing your purpose, knowing what you're proficient at and what is really valuable to kind of your efforts and to the company that you work for, like really focusing on your passion and your proficiency. So we're going to be discussing that a bit later, I think in like 2 slides from now. But really, I think it's just a really romantic way to look at what focus can bring us in life. If we know what we want and we can structure our lives around that, then we can explore our dreams and really dig down into our talents.
Awesome. Cool. Well, let's go. Let's keep going, man.
Yes.
Curiosity is there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, so in terms of the first step, this is stop. So we're formulating, evaluating, and rejuvenating in the next few slides. So in the first one, yeah, we're formulating. So in terms of kind of deciding what you want to do, I think there are really 3 objectives when it comes down to people who want to learn productivity and really want to kind of focus on that. So the first one is efficiency. People want to be able to do what they're doing quicker. They want to be able to do it with maybe less effort. Yeah, so efficiency is usually one of the first reasons you'll hear for wanting to become more productive. Another reason people say that they want to become more productive is that they want success. And I mean, I think that makes sense. Like if you work harder, if you get more done, you think you can be more successful. And that could be the case. But in the book, Michael Hyatt talks about freedom being the ultimate objective for focus and productivity. If you can't make yourself free, like if you can't, he gives a few examples, but ultimately we shouldn't always want to be doing more. We shouldn't want to just be striving for like success and to have more done. We should also want to optimize our lives. Like the reason we're investing time in productivity is so we can actually get time back in the end. So we're trying to get this freedom so that, for example, if our kids walk into the office, we should be able to take a few minutes break because we know that we're totally like we're on top of everything that's happening. So we can take a few minutes to really interact with the people who are important to us when they need us. And yeah, I think that's just a really beautiful way of putting productivity. And it's something that I haven't really thought about too much, but really I think like the point of productivity is to just get the right things done and not overwork yourself. So get the right things done.
Yeah, I think here, like, I've read a little bit about the author. I think I've seen some videos, but basically he was a successful CEO, but then realized that, some of the things that really matter in life like, you know, family, friends, health, these sort of things. Like he was neglecting, and I guess that's like that's where he's kind of going with the book, like to get the freedom so that you can not only have more time and space to do things that matter or take care of the things that matter. Um, yeah, not just that, but also to probably enjoy work more. I'm just guessing here, but like for me, it sounds like that. I haven't read the book, but I've seen summaries and outlines, and from what I'm hearing from you, is to also like enjoy the work and the freedom that you have after that. You know, because you can just keep working, keep working, keep working. Uh, your productivity will suffer. You maybe will in short term output more, but you're not going to have that freedom or space for, you know, to spend, like as you said, time with kids, all these things. Yeah, so filling up your time is definitely not a great idea.
Yeah, I think it can feel a bit counterproductive sometimes when we say like we only want to focus on kind of what it matters so that we can actually have some time back. A lot of people want to just fill all the hours of the working day with kind of tasks and always doing something. I think we'll discuss this a bit more later, but I think it's just not productive to always try to fit everything into the 8 hours that we work each day, because that usually means that we end up working more than either we're paid to or that we have to, just because we want to feel busy. We don't want to actually get things done
Mhm.
and kind of focus necessarily. But yeah, the whole theory kind of wraps in together. So yeah, let's move on to the next
Mhm.
sections. But just in terms of the different kinds of freedom that he mentions in the first chapter, we have the freedom to focus. So this is like, yeah, when you have time to, yeah, focus on what's important. The freedom to be present. So I guess this is kind of like mindfulness and just being aware of everything that's happening around you. The freedom to be spontaneous. So if you kind of come up with like, oh, this could be an interesting idea, but I don't know if I should look into it. It'd be good to have like the extra time to kind of look into that kind of more strategic work rather than always feeling like, oh no, I have to do this busy work always and I can't take any time to try to level up. And then also the freedom to do nothing, as we said. So that's kind of, I guess, the freedom to, um, yeah, the freedom to just, yeah,
To
react to things.
relax and yeah,
Yeah,
take a step back sometimes, probably also.
sure. And he brings up the example in the book of how a lot of these kind of breakthrough ideas that we have in our work aren't necessarily from the 9 to 5 hours. A lot of these ideas that we have are like actually in the shower, because that's when we're in this state of like, okay, I know what I have to do. I have to put shampoo on my hair. I have to put body wash on. And then like you're in this kind of routine, uh, and your mind is just like not doing anything because it's on this like ritual. So it's just kind of like coming up with these like spontaneous ideas. Oh, this would be cool. And this would be cool too. And then you kind of, you maybe you don't think about it, but you actually develop in your mind while you're doing mundane tasks like showering.
Yeah, it's like Don Draper sleeping on a couch and then getting all these crazy ad
Yeah.
ideas.
Oh, Mad Men. Great show.
Yeah, it is. Right. Awesome. Awesome. Let's keep going.
Cool. So ultimately here, what we want is to, from this first step, to be clear on our vision and to make sure that we get the right things done. And we have a quote here from Alice in Wonderland. So we have Alice saying, Alice speaking to the Cheshire Cat. She says, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" And the cat replies, "That depends a good deal on where you want to get to." And I think that really sums up this step, because if you don't know what your ultimate productivity goal is, how are you ever going to reach it? Um, so yeah, that's the first step. So that's kind of just like a general overview of yeah, why we would want to be productive. The second step is more theoretical, and here is where it really gets interesting. So the second step is evaluating. So we want to determine our course. And I think I mentioned before where we want to focus our energy on is the intersection between we have passion and we have proficiency. So we want to be good at something and we want to enjoy doing something. So we have a few different zones that we can see to the right. And really, this is a matrix where it's saying things that we're passionate about, but proficient at. And I think there's a few different ways to kind of look at this, but basically, the worst zone to be in is the drudgery zone. So this is anything that we're not proficient at and we're not passionate about. We'll discuss more strategy of how to deal with each of these kind of zones later, like tasks that fall into each zone. But I think for now, it just helps to know that drudgery is probably the worst one, where we're not proficient, not passionate. Disinterest is actually stuff that we enjoy doing, but we're not good at. Sorry, no, that was distraction zone is things that we're passionate about, but not proficient. So that's things that like we enjoy, but they might actually just be distracting us. Like we probably shouldn't be focusing our energy there because we're not the best people to do it, just because we're not the best at it. Somebody else could do the job better, but we might get distracted by it because we just enjoy doing it. The disinterest zone is where we're proficient, but not passionate. So this is where we don't enjoy what we're doing, but we are quite good at it. And really, the issue with this zone is that you're probably going to feel a lot more tired after you do it. So in the book, he mentions things like how he's good at like math and accounting, but he doesn't enjoy it. So whenever he ended up doing more administrative tasks like that as CEO, as you mentioned, he would just find himself just tired for the rest of the day because it's not what he finds like the most desirable thing to be working on. And that's where we have the desire zone. So desire zone is things that we're passionate and proficient at. And this is really the true north, as he kind of puts it in his theory. Like we should always be aiming to fill our time with desire zone tasks so that we can, get the things that we are best suited to work on. And I'm not sure if you can actually notice that from the chart to the right, but there's actually a fifth zone. So this is the development zone. So development zone is anything within this distraction zone or the disinterest zone that you would like to put into your desire zone. So things in your distraction zone that you're not proficient at, those are things that you might think that you'd like to develop over the next few years of your career so that you can actually put into your desire zone. So by raising your proficiency, it would actually be in your desire zone. And likewise, things in the disinterest zone, these are things that you're not passionate about, but you might like rationally see something kind of valuable about it, but you think you need to either have more exposure to it, or you just need to work with it a bit more, and you might become passionate about it because you think it could be good for your career. These are things that you can develop into your desire zone. So at the end of the day, we want all of the tasks that we're working on to be in the desire zone. And we might have an idea of things that are in our development zone because we want to move them from either zones 2 or 3 into zone 1, which is the desire zone. And I think another point that he brings up in this chapter is just to replace limiting beliefs with liberating truths. So I think there's a few limiting beliefs that he mentions in the book. So I definitely recommend anybody to read this book because it's really easy to read and it's pretty informative and it could be quite eye-opening. But for example, one of these limiting beliefs is that, I just don't have time. And if you think you don't have time, then you're probably right. I mean, you do have time, but it really comes down to what you prioritize in life. And I think all the benefits that we're talking about today, it really should be worth investing this extra time just to learn how to be free to focus. Another kind of limiting belief that he mentions is that some people say, I tried it once and it didn't work. Well, I mean, I think that's why he wrote a book on it, to help people learn how to do it correctly. Because it can be difficult, like when you're trying to become productive. If you only try it once and you fail, it's easy to say, I tried it and it just doesn't work. Whereas like if Edison had said that, we might not have electric lights by now. Really, it comes down to how many times you're willing to fail before you succeed.
Well, he would, because he stole them from Tesla or something like that.
Sure.
No, I don't know the history, but yeah, of course. This for me kind of reminds a bit of the flow as well. Like it is a bit different where you're trying to like the flow methodology or system or whatever you call it, theory, where you're most engaged in a task if your skill level matches the difficulty of the task. So like it challenges you enough so that it's interesting but not overwhelming. So yeah, I think it's that is relatable, and I guess that's where you want to be in terms of productivity. So it makes sense for me that this is step number two, because I mean you can do things that you're good at with um, with passion, but it's step number two because it doesn't mean it's the right things. And I think the first step was like deciding what is the right thing for you to focus in your life. What do you want to ultimately achieve?
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah. So just to give some more detail around this, the reason why it's important to focus on things that we're passionate and proficient about is because we have a limited amount of time and energy. So when we focus on things that we are kind of not interested in, we lose our energy because we're not being like, if you love what you're working on or if you really enjoy it, you can get into this flow state, like you mentioned, and actually can increase the amount of energy that you have. But at the same time, if you're working on something in your distraction zone where you're passionate about it, but you're not very proficient, it's a bit of like a waste of time in a way, because somebody else could do it much quicker than what you can do it.
It also seems like some sort of a vicious circle, because I mean, the more you're in the distraction zone, the less interest you lose for the things that actually like you were passionate about. So it seems like you're just like, wow, go all the way down to whatever the lower zone is with everything.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Could happen. Could happen.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think if you spend a day working on things that you're not interested or not fully proficient in, or both, if you're not proficient or passionate, you can just end up kind of falling down into the drudgery
You're just
zone. And
less excited to start them the next day. And then if you've been doing it for weeks and months, then it's just like you forget that you were passionate about it in the first place.
yeah, and I just need to mention work-life balance here, because I think work-life balance isn't just about like, yeah, getting out of work on time to get home. It's also about like using your kind of passions, like we're saying, and like your personal skills, and feeling like you're enjoying work because you're actually doing what you should be doing, so that you can then go home and fully relax, unwind, and feel like you've accomplished something that matters to you. Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, for me, this term work-life balance is a weird thing that and yeah, for me, I don't know, work and life is just kind of the same thing, and it's more like yeah, for me, what matters is like these just being productive and getting the right things done, and then enjoying the rest of your time. But it's still yeah, it can be linked with work, and I don't see a problem with not separating the two. But you need off time from work
Definitely.
to really enjoy the rest and also enjoy the fruits of your labor, so to speak. Um, yeah. Anyway, just
Totally.
some 2 cents from the side of the Northern Lights.
Yeah. Love the background, by the way.
Thanks.
I hope everybody is watching the video podcast so
I
everyone can
hope
see
nobody
Janus's.
sees me.
It's really beautiful this time of year.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's just Amsterdam, the middle of the day. That's how it looks like, in case
Perfect.
anybody's wondering.
Uh, good
All
stuff.
right, let's keep
Uh,
going, man.
we also have a quote for this this part. So everybody ends up somewhere in life. A few people end up somewhere on purpose. So that's really just understanding where you want to go and doing what you can to get there. Uh, and that was by Andy Stanley, that quote. The book is full of quotes, so each slide is going to have one, just to kind of exemplify what we're talking about. Yeah, so I think this is something we've alluded to in the last few slides. So rejuvenation, how to like rejuvenate your mind and body. So yeah, I actually mentioned this on the last slide, I think, but time is fixed, energy can flex. So what that means is that we only have a certain number of hours in the day, but the energy that we have each day can actually decrease if we're not taking care of ourselves in the right way. So every day, or at least regularly, we should be focusing on getting enough sleep, eating healthy, moving enough. So we need to get aerobic exercise and strength training regularly. We also need to connect with other people. We need to have our social connections, our relationships. We need to play. So we need to kind of do things that are outside of work. So like, for instance, Einstein played the violin, and just that allowed his mind to kind of think in a creative way. So he was free to make mistakes and to do kind of creative things outside of kind of thinking just about science. And he actually brought a lot of that into his work. But we also need to take time to reflect. And this is one of the things that I think people overlook the most out of everything on this list. We need to reflect on kind of what we're doing with our lives and our work, just to understand, just to better understand what we do, and if that's what we should be focusing on, if we're approaching everything in the right way, because this is the stage where we can actually kind of think, okay, maybe actually I should consider doing things at work this way, or I should focus less on this and more on that. Reflection is really important, so everyone should definitely try to do that more, I think, myself included.
Have you heard about Einstein's bath time? Or
I don't think
basically,
so.
besides violin, I mean, like that's a kind of well-known fact, but fact or just his hobby. But he basically, I don't know, took a lot of time in the bath, because you get time, same as like, you know, a lot of people get a lot of ideas, good ideas in the shower. For him, it was bath, because you're not just like you're, I mean, not engaged in anything else. There's no distractions, but also in the warm water, your body gets like super relaxed, and when there's no tension, then good ideas can float up.
Hmm.
So that's, you know, something people can try.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. It's been forever since I took a bath. Thanks for
Man,
reminding me.
people should take more baths.
Yeah, it's
World
2020,
would be a better
everybody.
place. Yeah.
Take more baths. Yeah, I think Einstein is a really great example. He probably did, I would assume he did most of these things quite well. I haven't looked into it. Don't quote me on that. But I also think that, so the seventh step in this process is to unplug. And this is to actually take the time to like, make sure you're turning off your email at night. Like ideally, when you end the workday, you shouldn't be looking at anything work related. Kind of your notifications also, I think we discussed in our last episode about quitting social media. And this is the kind of thing we're talking about. We need to disconnect from this world that's constantly distracting us, constantly bugging us, and like, hey, did you know that this happened? And like, hey, somebody poked you. These are things that we just need to take some time to ourselves sometimes, and not constantly be bombarded with these messages. And we have a quote here from Anne Lamott, which is, almost everything will work if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. So I love that, because I think we all need
Nice.
to unplug once in a while.
Yeah, true. And I mean, I don't know where's the kind of safe, not safe line, but like where's the happy medium here. Like in the previous podcast, we discussed deep work, and the author kind of promotes this idea of quitting social media for good. Like there's nothing. I mean, he basically states that, at least for him in his life, the benefits of quitting media far outweigh the the you know, the cons, and all the bad points. um I'm trying it. Slowly. For me, let's talk about myself a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
But for me, actually, for last week, I've quit WhatsApp, which has been the major driver for my like just me myself picking up the phone. And I don't know, I haven't felt that much freedom from technology for a long time. Like I don't feel I need my phone at all nowadays. Um, and yeah, it's just such a distraction and a bad habit always to check it.
Mm,
So maybe if it's even just if you get rid of or minimize the one bigger distraction in your life, it can have some crazy good benefits.
yeah, I think we might need a whole episode just to discuss kind of quitting social media.
For
And we have
sure.
like your first-hand account. I think that would be really useful.
I could measure my stress level decrease after quitting.
It sounds like a great experiment.
Make it scientific.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, but I definitely can. Basically, for the 7 point, I absolutely agree. Unplugging, um, your brain starts to work differently, and you appreciate different things, and the depth you go into, like completely changes. The depth that you can get into, like anything. Like if you're not habituated to constantly distract yourself, um, yeah, I think it can change a lot.
Cool,
That's
man.
it.
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely good. I'm glad that you're doing that and that it's working out. It's something that I wish I could do more.
We'll try.
So
We'll try.
yeah, yeah, we'll do.
All right, keep going, man. This is
Cool, man.
great.
Yeah, cool. So the second step, as we mentioned, is cutting. So here we're going to eliminate, automate, and delegate. So eliminate, really, this is about saying no to more tasks. So this starts off with saying that the first idea of this kind of chapter is that time is a zero-sum game. So it's a lot like poker. If you spend time doing something that you're not best equipped to do, then that time will disappear. So if you know that you should be working on something, but you instead say yes just to help someone else out, then you're really just focusing on somebody else's priorities and you're losing the poker game in a way. So as we mentioned before, productivity is about doing the right things and not just doing more all the time. Like productivity shouldn't be about working past the 9 to 5 hours that you're contracted to work, or like, yeah, spending more time away from your friends and family. It should be more about just getting effective work done, the right things quicker. So yeah, essentially, one of the ideas, another idea from this chapter is to create a not to do list. So this is things that we find ourselves doing a lot, that we know we shouldn't be doing because they aren't our core. Like after we planned our kind of priorities, they don't align with that. So this is things like in your distraction zone, things in your disinterest zone, or even in your drudgery zone. Like things that you know that you shouldn't be doing. If you formulate that into a list, you can kind of review that every once in a while just to make sure you're looking at like a complete list of it, and you can add anything as it comes up. But just knowing these things that you shouldn't be doing will kind of like flag an alert in your mind whenever somebody asks you to do that, or whenever you kind of feel like, oh, I should do this. I think that's the first step, just to know what you shouldn't be doing. And when it comes to people requesting tasks from you, like people requesting your help on something, after you've created this not to do list, you should have a good idea of what you shouldn't be doing, because you know what your priorities are at work. So he comes up with a really good strategy in this book called the affirmation strategy. So this is when somebody asks you to help on something that you know that you're not like you're not best suited to work on, or that it doesn't align with your priorities. So really it's a 3-part strategy, where it starts with saying yes, and then in the middle you say no, and then at the end you say yes. So really this comes down to first acknowledging the relationship on the first yes, and saying, yeah, thanks for coming to me and kind of mentioning this. However, with the no, you're saying, I have this priority that I need to work on, so unfortunately I won't be able to help you. But then with the third yes, you can kind of speak to them a bit more and maybe try to offer another solution. Maybe you know someone who's like better suited to help them with that. So these three parts are really just telling, because there's a few different strategies, but affirmation strategy is the best one. If you kind of just say yes to everything, you're kind of just doing what other people just kind of want from you. There's another one where you just say no, and that's just, it's not as kind of, obviously you want to preserve the relationship at the same time, and you don't want to just say, no, I can't do that, I'm too busy. You also want to tell them why you can't prioritize that, and you also want to help them so that you're preserving this relationship and helping them as much as you can without it taking too much of your time. And I think we have a Steve Jobs quote here that says, I'm actually as proud of the things we haven't done as the things I have done. And I think that is, that's a really good way to look at it. Apple in like 97, when Steve Jobs went back to the company, I think they had like 200 different kinds of computers, and Steve Jobs scrapped like 95% of them because he said they needed to focus on making their core select product as good as they could be. And that's how we ended up with like the Macintosh. And that kind of thinking resulted in like the iPod, where there was like one iPod to start off with. And then they had, like a smaller iPod, and they had the iPod Shuffle. And like now we have the iPhone, obviously, but they've still more or less stuck to the strategy. I think things have changed since Tim Cook took over. Not firing any shots here, but I think really at the core of Apple's success is focusing on a few things really intently. And I think that's something that Steve Jobs did really well.
Yeah, for sure. Like, there's another thing like I could add from recent experience is basically at work we use this app Slack, chat app. Everybody, I think a lot of companies use it now, and it's been like there's some mixed feelings with it. Like we still feel we need it to just get some quick input from people. But what I've done is I've limited the times when I'll be available for this sort of a quick input when people need it from me, and by doing that or just using these agile kind of daily stand-up meetings, like a quick 15-minute call instead of just always being available throughout the day, the conversation is much more focused. People are prepared. They've got specific questions already well thought out. What are their blockers? Like what kind of input they need? They maybe spend time on actually Googling it themselves or finding solutions somewhere. And by this, you're also kind of it's relatable to this, like not to do, or you're limiting your availability. So you're limiting the distractions, and you're also limiting the yeses and nos that you have to say. And on the same time, I feel that you're kind of what's the best word, but kind of helping empowering your colleagues, your employees to think themselves, to maybe develop their leadership skills, and just like get things done themselves, and also encourage teamwork elsewhere, instead of being if you're an entrepreneur, for example, or manager and so on, you might be this kind of bottleneck of the company sometimes, where you're the single point of contact, and just being burdened by employees, by clients, and so on. Where if you just let go of it, if you limit your time, if you're not always available, and what you said in a kind of relationship preserving way, where you just communicate all these things, your availability and so on, in a nice way, it can do wonders. Let's leave it there.
Yeah, sure. I definitely think preserving the relationship it should be one of our kind of core concerns, or it should be one of the things we focus on as well, because at work, we're not just robots who do the tasks that we have been asked to do and like we know we should do. like we're also humans. We're also people who need to connect, as we saw in like the rejuvenation slide. So I think you took like a really interesting approach there, because I think this book is very centered around the individual and how you shouldn't be focusing on doing things that are outside your scope because somebody else is better suited to do those things. I think is really interesting. However, you're saying that other people have the chance to develop when you say that you can't work. So it's actually, if you look at like the collective perspective, this person has like a new opportunity to kind of develop in a new way, and also that the organization as a whole might work more efficiently since you might be acting as a bottleneck. So yeah, I think that's a really really interesting take on that. So
Yeah, because there's only so much of one person can do, and at some point, like if you're the bottleneck, at some point your whole organization and productivity will reach its like capacity, its limit. So if you do want to grow, that's one benefit, of course. You have to like stop being the bottleneck, and and also if you do want this freedom, and ability to focus on things that matter, that's another reason like to eliminate or like this point number 4, flex your no muscle in a nice relationship preserving way.
absolutely. Cool. Yeah, so just moving on to the next step, because I think the main takeaway here is just say no more often. Feel comfortable saying no when it doesn't align with what your priority is. The next one is to automate. And I think this step, a lot of people think about first when they think about productivity. They think about, oh, what can I do from like a technical perspective to kind of do less work by having everything scripted into code. But there's it's not just tech automation at this step. So the author mentions 4 different kinds of automation, and I think we can touch on each of those now because they're quite different and they're all quite interesting, and they're different ways of looking at automation. So the first one is self-automation. So this comes down to like routines, rituals, and habits. So specific processes that we have. For instance, when we start the workday, we might have a specific routine where we grab a cup of coffee, check our email, check our Slack, or whatever, and then we go into like task number 1. Or we have habits where like, oh, when this comes up, then I respond in this way. So self-automation is just like, it's kind of like it's like a self documentation of what needs to be done at different times in the day, and just to get like the most important things done. And I think there's a little crossover between this and the third point, but we'll take that when we get to that. But basically just working like optimally by knowing like, okay, it's like habit stacking. If you've read the Atomic Habits book, where you do this, you do this, you do this, and you do this, and that's the routine, that's the ritual. And now we have time to kind of focus on other things because we've been productive in that short sprint.
Yeah.
The second point here is about template automation. So this is for completing repeated actions. So one of the examples from the book is when you get emailed similar things a lot of the times, you can just respond with just a template email because you're going to cover off most of the same points. You don't have to write the whole email from hand, like from scratch each time. He actually gives a really good tip on how you can use template emails. So if you have most email clients have this where you can add a signature to your email. So if you use that signature function really effectively, what you can do is actually put in each of your templates as a different signature. And rather than like copying and pasting from a different place, what you can actually do is just click to add a different signature, and then all of a sudden it auto-fills with a template email. And I think template automation, it really comes down to things that you have to do often, that you can then just, copy and paste or like insert as this like really effective signature works. We also have, as I alluded to earlier, the process automation. So this is where we can write down our workflow. So we document how our workflow works. This is good for a few reasons. First of all, It's good for optimizing. So, well, I mean, I guess the first thing is that if we are like tired, we can just have a look at the process that we've written down. Like for example, when we start work on the Monday morning or like after lunch, we can just have a look at that and then like do exactly what the to-do list says. It's things that we might have to do like repeatedly, but it's also a method of like optimizing. So if we know that we have 7 steps in this process, but 3 of those steps could be replaced with one single step, that's a way of like optimizing the process. We also can use this workflow to delegate. For example, if we are going on holiday, it's easier to have a process already that you're sharing with somebody than to think of it from scratch when you're about to go on holiday and just hope that everything works out. Because obviously, when you kind of put it down for yourself, you're constantly reviewing and optimizing, then you don't really have to review it as much right before you delegate it to somebody. And you know that it works because you follow it yourself. And then the last type of automation that he mentions is tech automation. And this can be things, a few different kinds of things like macro processing. So this is like doing things. I'm not sure if you're like familiar with macros, but it's really useful for like, for instance, in Excel, if you have things that you do a lot in Excel, then you can use a command like Control V, and then Control V is like to paste, but it's the same concept. You can program in a new shortcut like Control R. I don't think that actually does anything in Excel by default. So if you put that as the control, you can do things like, so one specific example that I've done for SEO is like taking a whole list of keywords with search volume for each month. So what you can do there is add color scale to each row individually, so that for each row, you can see like which was the lowest and which was the highest. And you hold in Control R, and then it goes through and it does that for each thing. So you don't have to kind of highlight each row, conditional formatting, color scale. You're programming that into it so that it does the whole thing for you. So macro processing, I'm probably not doing the best job at explaining it, but it's really just doing like repetitive work for you.
So, but it's also like, okay, from what I'm understanding, it's also speeding up this repetitive work as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. It's automating with tech things that we don't really need to do, because we tell the code how it needs to be done, and then it does it if we have to do it like a lot of times after that.
And I think a lot of people are not even aware of like all the solutions that are nowadays out there of how you can interlink tools through API, and a lot of manual work that's done nowadays by, I don't know, knowledge workers in general. Yeah, it can be done through automation or integrations with different tools who just take off a lot of this workload that's kind of mundane, and yeah, it's just a lot of processing work that can be eliminated, or at least reduced. Easy thing to do is just, if you feel it's something mundane that you're doing, just Google how can I automate X, and there might be a solution for it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good methodology. Like if you know that you can do something, all you have to do is Google it, and you can figure out how to do it if you just take the time to learn it.
Because someone's probably, very likely before you, there has been a person who already thought about this and asked this question. And then if it's not available already, then there's probably going to be something coming up soon enough, or there's some forum where there's a post or Q&A, or support topic about this. So it's always good to just check, okay, is there a way to do this better, faster, easier? And oftentimes it is. So it's definitely worth at least checking.
Absolutely. Like tech automation it's a good way to level up your productivity. Definitely. And all it takes is like a little Google, a quick Google search. And just the last 2 points on tech automation, pretty similar to the first one. We have text expansion, and the author gives a few examples of how he uses text expansion. So this is when you have a shortcut that results in something that you have to type that is like longer. So the example that he gives is that he'll write semicolon F2, and what that outputs is, like when he's in a word processor, that those 3 characters will actually change to free to focus with the TM, with the trademark with it. So he doesn't have to type free to focus. He types 3 characters, and that's why it's called text expansion. So again, it's like a shortcut. And I think I didn't realize that was possible, but I'm going to start using that after reading this book because it seems really cool. And also screencasting, which is like, it's similar to the previous step because it's just a video tutorial, basically, where you can see you talking about what's on your screen, and whoever has to kind of do a similar, if you've delegated to somebody, or if somebody has to do a similar task in the future, they can just have a look at that. And yeah, there should be less confusion in terms of actually doing the work, because you can just point out whatever needs to be done.
Yeah, it's quite a common thing actually. We try to use, I wouldn't call it screencasting. We just record videos of for our processes for employees. So instead of having like these long Word doc files, like step 1, this step 1.1, do this in this specific way. Instead, just like you can always make a quick video. Sometimes it's just like 1-minute video that explains more than like 2, 3, 5-page Word document.
Yeah.
As super efficient, easy to share, easy to watch for, and absorb for anybody who's trying to learn what to do, how to do it. Easy to come back. So definitely could recommend for creating processes. Like it can be anything. Like if say you're renting a house often, or you've got an Airbnb, you can make a video, or because it's just like things that are repeating. You can make repeatable processes so that you don't have to communicate the same thing over and over again, like whatever it is. Yeah, and if you record it on video, it's a very easily digestible form of content for anybody to learn from.
Yeah, I mean, I can just imagine watching a video compared to reading a Word doc. It must be a lot easier to focus on that.
Yeah, it is. You can relax. One benefit that's from Word doc maybe is something that a video can be slow, and currently there's not much option to search by word. Where on a document, of course, you can quickly just, if you're interested in one thing, like you just quickly can search and find it. But yeah, video. This part of the video is not not that well developed yet, but I feel it's coming
with AI and automatic transcriptions.
Exactly, and translations and these things, and yeah,
just around the corner.
Soon.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Definitely worth looking into tech automation if it's something that doesn't maybe come naturally to your field. We also have a quote here from Alfred North Whitehead, which says that civilization expands by extending the number of important operations we can perform without thinking about them. So just I think that's an inspiring one. Cool. So the last step in cutting is to delegate. So this is when we've cloned ourselves from the equation. Really it comes down to finding somebody who's better suited to do the job, because the thing that you want to delegate is within somebody else's desire zone. So I think there's we'll go through some of the kind of concepts in the book about delegation. So the first one is the delegation hierarchy. So we can look at the 4 different zones, and kind of the way that we would prioritize what we delegate is just looking at these zones kind of in order. So zone 4, the drudgery zone, is the first one that we'd obviously want to delegate, because that is everything that's kind of we're not proficient at, we're not passionate about. So not only is it draining our energy, we're also not that good at it. So somebody else would be better suited to do it just to get it done in like quicker time, but also it's draining our energy. So that's why that should be the first zone of tasks that we kind of give to other people. Followed by that, we have the not distraction, but the disinterest zone. So that's things that we're passionate about. We're not passionate about, but we are quite proficient at. Um, is that the right order? Yeah, either way, like disinterest and distraction are pretty much at the same level. So we want to delegate those before we then go on to desire zone, which is really what we should hold on to. And the only time we would actually delegate a desire zone task is by knowing that we have more tasks in that zone than we could ever possibly kind of work on in the regular 9 to 5, 5-day working week. So I think it just helps to kind of know in what order you should delegate your tasks. And I think looking at it in that way, categorizing every task by what zone it should be in based on how proficient and passionate you are. Yeah, I think that's a really useful system to use. We also have the delegation process, which it comes down to 7 different steps. I don't think we'll go through everything in this episode, but it really starts off with kind of knowing what you need to delegate and then passing it off to the right person. And then like telling them the exact level of involvement that you think that they should be kind of working on the task. Because if you give somebody a task and you don't tell them exactly what you expect them to work on it, then you might be surprised or kind of caught. You might not expect them to do the level of work that they work, because you have overachievers and you have underachievers usually in the workspace. And somebody who's an overachiever will take this project and go running with it and just really try to complete it, take it to completion. And you might not have been expecting that. So you can't blame the overachiever for doing that if you weren't clear on what you expected from that person. And then you have underachievers who maybe you expect them to do more, be more involved with it, help kind of with the operation, like get it up and running. But really they just looked into some of the research and then they didn't even kind of tell you when they were done because they were expecting you to contact them. So it's really important to be clear about this when you delegate to somebody. And yeah, I think that's the main kind of delegation process. But in terms of the 5 levels of delegation, you start off with just asking somebody to do literally what you're saying. That's level 1. And that's people who've not really been, they're not that involved in the delegation. But then you have level 5, which is where people are kind of making their own decisions. You're telling them what you need to have done, and then they are just kind of taking that idea, they're running with it. They actually don't even need to check in with you because you just trust them to manage the whole thing. They don't even have to follow up with you. They just have to complete the task, and that's fine. And I think you work people up from level 1 to level 5 over time and practice. For example, in level 2, I think that's when you just ask them to do research. Like you just want them to look at a few different options. Level 3 is when they actually start with operations. So you ask them to do something, but they have to make some of their own decisions, but they have to report to you whenever something is kind of unexpected. Level 4 is, yeah, they're managing everything themselves, but then they're giving you updates on what's happening. And then level 5 is like, yeah, they can just run with it because you trust them to kind of do everything that's involved with that task. And the main purpose of delegation is to buy back your time. So it's actually finding this time, like with automation, to actually have time so you can be free to focus.
Mm-hmm. For the level 5, I maybe could add some thoughts that for level 5 for me would be where you kind of more inspire other people, employees, colleagues by having a common goal. And then the ultimate level that I would see is like, hey, we have a common goal, but it's up to that person to come up with steps and resources and processes and so on how to get it done in the most efficient way. Like one, because there's a certain amount of trust there, but there's also the person has skills to get it done, so you don't have to get too involved and on exactly how it's going to get done, just because you have the common, just having this common goal, shared goal that is clear, There's KPIs or some sort of performance indicators, like what does it mean to achieve this goal. It's measurable and so on. There's a timeline for it. Like you can use these SMART goals also. If it's clearly communicated, like for me, the level 5 would be that this person will just achieve this goal instead of get a specific deliverable. Yeah, which would be maybe in the lower realms of delegation levels.
Yeah, I think that yeah, totally. I think it also comes down to what you were saying before about when you delegate to people, like either you said no or you delegate to them, it actually means that they
Lost you there for a moment.
up the different levels of delegation so that they can actually learn to manage it completely themselves. And I mean, I think what you see with overachievers is that they always want the next promotion. And whenever you can find things like this, where, okay, this is what I have to work on, but I would like to delegate it to someone else, you can find someone else who, yeah, wants to move up and wants more responsibilities. So yeah, that I think that's a good way of kind of looking at it. Like, you doing it is not necessarily the best thing for the company, because delegating to someone else actually gives them the opportunity to develop.
Yeah, yeah. I lost you there for a few seconds in the beginning.
Okay.
Um,
Was it my internet?
Probably was someone's internet,
Okay.
but it's been fine so far.
Okay.
What one another thing I could add, like here, it's like this. But when people have common mission, um, I think it can raise the levels of delegation for everyone. If they share this mission, even if they're on level 1, where they need specific instructions on how to do the task, and guidance and so on, it still can help, and maybe they can feel inspired to think outside the box, to go the extra mile and so on. So yeah, for me, the mission, the goal, the common goals, like I think really help to raise the delegation levels, and also getting people inspired to do more, to think on their own. Yeah.
Sure. But I think this comes down to being clear of what you expect, because sometimes you don't want people to overachieve and do something that you haven't briefed them on yet. Like, they can't take all the considerations into they can't take everything into consideration if they don't know the whole story. And that's why you have to work them up the levels of delegation at their own pace. Um, because yeah, usually what we work on isn't as clear as, like, yeah, just do this and then make your own decisions and then it'll be perfect. So it's just repeated practice, deliberate practice to actually become proficient at the task.
Yeah, like just leaving employees and hoping that they will manage it on their own is a recipe for a disaster.
It's a gamble. Yeah.
At best, right? But for me, it's not even a gamble. It's a clear loss. Like, it's very and especially if it's new employees, it's just horrible to do. Like, even like top level experts, they will have to guess exactly what you're wanting, because they know they have their own idea of what will work, but it not necessarily will yeah, what will be the same what you're expecting or what your vision is. And if that is not communicated, that's absolute, yeah, recipe for disaster, and in my opinion and in my experience.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Even experts can't follow your methodology if you weren't clear on it.
Yeah, or
And
if
we
there
have,
are no methodologies like supplied.
yeah, true.
Yeah,
Uh,
right, let's keep going.
Cool. I just want to share this quote by Dawson Trotman. So it says, I purpose never to do anything that others could or would do when there was so much of importance to be done that others could or would do. I purpose never to do anything that others could or would do when there was so much of importance to be done that others. I think I messed up that quote. I'm going to be honest, because I think that second part would be that others could not or would not do.
That would make more sense.
Yeah, I had to reread it just to make sure. But yeah, don't quote me on that. Look up the quote yourself.
Never believe everything that's on the internet.
Yeah.
Isaac Newton.
Yes, except for the rest of this podcast, because everything else is correct.
Yeah, and also, yeah, exactly. The before and after. Right,
Cool.
let's go. Step 3, act.
Cool. So in step 3, this is where we're actually putting things into action. So we have our plan. We've cut out everything that's not important, that we don't need to necessarily do ourselves. So here we're consolidating, procrastinating, and activating. Not really procrastinating, but I think we have a different name for it. In terms of consolidation, this is when we're planning our ideal week. So we have to take into consideration kind of a few different things, but essentially we want to have a plan before we start working. So we split out our week into like each day, and then each day we have maybe hour or hour and a half blocks where we're focusing on specific things in each block. The reason that we're doing this is so that we can work intentionally, so we can minimize the amount of multitasking we're doing, because multitasking ultimately resolves to attention residue. So attention residue is something that I think it's a term that he's coined, but it's that when you switch from one task to the next and you're working on the next task, your mind is still subconsciously working on the previous task. So you're not working effectively. And I think this comes down to the whole deep work concept we discussed in the last episode as well, because when you're multitasking, switching from task to task, your mind isn't fully on the task at hand because you haven't given your mind enough kind of time to focus on it.
And it's the constant switching that is actually the bigger drain of the energy or the willpower and so on. It's not that, if you are only spending your energy on the task in a undistracted, is that the right word, undistracted way, just fully focused in from minute 1 to minute 60 for 1 hour, like you would spend way less energy than if you're like constantly switching from task to task, checking message, checking email, doing some another urgent task. Yeah, you just waste a lot of energy that way.
Yeah, and it's just not a great way to work. So it's good to kind of plan out your week with these kind of themes and activities. Like, yeah, you want to put everything into batches. So a good kind of concept to have is mega batching, which is where you take everything related to a certain thing that you have to do each week and plan those into your week in like big batches. So the example that he gives in the book is that he himself plans all of his kind of internal meetings on the Monday, all of his client meetings on the Friday, and that gives him every day in between to kind of focus on producing the work that he needs to really work on. And that way he batches his Tuesdays through Thursdays on the kind of mega batching, the big things that he needs to get done each week. And really what he's seen is that planning your ideal week in this way helps you achieve a more productive rhythm. And I think that's just a really cool way. If you have like the freedom, it's definitely worth looking into kind of how you plan your week and focusing each day maybe on a different theme. And like, I think this comes down to like deep work and just getting like flow and just getting all the important things done in the right rhythm. We also have a quote here from Annie Dillard, which is that a schedule defends from chaos and whim. It is a net for catching days. So I think this is a really cool way to look at it. Obviously, you know what your priorities are after the first few steps. How do you actually plan that in and like operate that way? That's why you have the schedule where you've planned out your ideal week so that you can try to live by that. Cool. So then we move on to the next task, or the next step, which is to designate. And this is where you actually plan, you prioritize your tasks for the week. So when you design your week, a few things to think about are you want to plan your biggest wins. So maybe you want to look at your kind of the most important things that you have to do, your core objectives that you can accomplish that week, like write that out and plan that into your week. you want to review the prior week so you can see what you accomplished last week, and if you kind of met your biggest wins that you were expecting. You can review all your lists and notes from the previous week. You can check your goals, projects, and deadlines to make sure you're on track with everything. Again, you can plan your weekly big three. So this is the three things that are the most important, would drive the biggest results each week. Like if you could accomplish three things in 1 week that would generate the most results, what three would those be? And then try to accomplish those three. And then you want to plan your rejuvenation as well. So how do you regain your energy through the week so that you can keep being productive without it just kind of draining you? And the big three is a concept that I don't know if he came up with it himself, but it's a really cool idea where, we have it seems like we have a never ending list of tasks, but we have these like the 80-20 rule, where a few of the things that we work on result in the biggest like output. So we want to make sure that we're prioritizing the big three, which is like a pretty manageable number, like the big three projects or goals or deadlines that we need to meet that week. We're also doing the same thing each day. So on like a smaller scale, rather than, because I know I enter each day with a to-do list with like maybe up to 10 different things that I want to try and do, but some of these things take more than an hour. So to try and do that each day with kind of an 8-hour workday, it's just not as feasible. So if you can try and focus on your big three, you might actually finish up your big three before lunch. Your three most productive hours of the day are the first three. So if you can try and plan in your daily big three so that they're at the beginning of your day, you have the rest of the day when you're maybe a bit lower energy to actually do the other things that maybe come up ad hoc or that aren't as important as your big three. And then we have a quote here from Greg McCown. I swear I mispronounced that last name, so apologies if I did, but it's a great quote. If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And that's so true. We all have to live with purpose and designate the most important things that we want to do each week if we actually want to accomplish them ourselves. Cool. And then I think the last step in this system is this is where we're really talking about focus. This is activating. So we're trying to beat interruptions and distractions. So interruptions are things that are, I think, external. So this is things like instant messaging, emails, kind of other people ringing us up, and just other people putting demands on our time. So we can kind of beat interruptions in different ways by limiting instant communication, whether we can like log off instant messaging at work and put in like an out of office because we're busy doing deep work. We're kind of managing kind of our priority tasks by limiting this instant communication. We're also beating distractions, which are more intrinsic. They're like internal interruptions, essentially. So this is where we focus on actually keeping focus. So we learn how to do more uphill work, which is like when we have energy, we should try to do the kind of maybe more mentally draining tasks, because these are usually the ones that drive the most results. For example, when we talk about deep work, we should try to do more uphill work and kind of always try to develop our minds to be able to focus for longer so that we can actually do more of this productive work. Because I think if you just start the day off with kind of easier tasks, it can make it really difficult to keep your focus over the long term. And then he also gives a few tips on improving focus. So for example, you can use technology that manages technology. So this is, I think, Yannis, you've talked about this quite a lot with like your Chrome extensions that only allow you to, or they block you from using certain websites throughout the day.
You can block out all the websites so that you like and have specific times. For example, like you can't open Facebook, YouTube, or whatever is ever distracting you, or Corona news, or you can block by keyword, and you're not able to open these tabs unless you're like crazy, like wanting to hack in and then try and find ways. But in general, you're not like these tabs get blocked, these browsers or websites get blocked. You can limit the amount of tabs that you can open so that you're not like working and getting lost on internet. There's loads of things you can do to eliminate distraction, and then slowly eliminate these habits for craving distraction as well. There's like, I was thinking like, well, like for the step 9 about chess. Weirdly enough, I've been playing chess since before Queen's Gambit came out. So just in case, it's important to state. And later on, only in my chess practice, I realized it's not just like about attacking and going after the king to checkmate it as quickly as possible, which is, I think, what a lot of new players want to do, who are, I don't know, aggressive and attacking. But over time, you realize it's really about positioning yourself so that for the win, and it's a long and super strategic game, and especially in the beginning is all about positioning yourself so that you're 1% better than or a few percent better than the opponent. You're just better suited for victory. You will have more opportunities, more space, less threats, better defense, these sort of things. And I feel for life and for productivity, these can seem like what we discussed. These technology things can seem like a small thing, but really it is strategically getting rid of some of the things that will make a big difference in years, months, in terms of your outcome, in terms of your happiness, productivity, success, like whatever your goals are. And it can really, I think, a lot of happiness can come out of just cutting out nonsense from your life. You don't necessarily have to put all the time in just being mega productive and then producing as much as possible. You can put it in fun things, but the benefit is that you'll enjoy it more, and you'll just work deeper. You'll think deeper. The relationships will be deeper. The conversations will be deeper and more valuable. So it can start with small steps. Linking my chess metaphor, it can start with small strategic steps. By just slowly eliminating stuff and positioning yourself for success, whatever your goals are, by taking some of these small steps. And that's why they are important and they are crucial. And I think a lot of people, including myself, overlook these tiny things that can be done. Just like, oh yeah, I'll do it at some point. But they make massive difference. That's my pep talk.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think you put in a few good points there. So I want to have a few notes there. I think chess is a great metaphor for doing kind of like small things that will result in an overall kind of success. But I think also, just in terms of what we're saying with rejuvenation, chess is a really good way of playing. So you need to do this kind of playing every day, and to actually get your mind to kind of be creative. Like, what can you do here? Also, it's a good way of increasing your focus. So I think the chess metaphor works in a few different ways. It's multi-layered. So I really like that.
For sure. You should start playing, man. It's a great game.
Yeah, definitely. I should get into it now. Yeah,
Okay.
no, I will.
What is productive music? I'm curious about this next one.
Yeah. So this is it's in the book. So he mentions that music can be used as like a productive assistance, like it can help you focus more in a few different ways. But when he talks about productive music, he's talking about music that isn't too loud, music that is not too distracting, like maybe music that doesn't really have lyrics. Maybe it's more like lo-fi or instrumental. But at the end of the day, it's music that you like, because music that you like will give you energy. And I think that's the reason that we need productive music, is because it'll give us the energy when we maybe feel drained from either being in a busy workspace, which I guess not many people are doing right now with like the whole pandemic, but it can also just uplift your energy. Maybe if you're feeling socially isolated, I think music can make a huge difference in your experience. So yeah, just productive music is music that you really, really enjoy, that isn't distracting, essentially. Yeah, and then the next few points we say like taking charge of your environment and having a clutter-free workspace. So what we're saying here is that if your workspace is really cluttered, then each time you see one of these things like on your desk, your mind will just be like, oh, what do I have to do about that? Like, so even if it's subconscious, like it will take energy from you when you see, like, if you have like a stack of papers on your desk and you look at it every time, you're like, oh, what am I going to do with that stack of papers? And just having like a really minimal workspace and like just knowing why you have everything on your desk really, I think, makes it easier to focus while you're at your workspace.
Yeah, there's quite a lot about this and the GTD, getting things done methodology, and our first podcast. Just everything that you have on your table should have a purpose, and the first thing before you start anything, just clear out everything. And it's a nice habit to have. Like at the end of the day, beginning of your work, just only have things in front of you that are necessary for the task at hand.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like you said, I think at the end of the workday, it's a really good habit to remove anything that's cluttering your workspace so that you can start each day fresh when you have the most energy, diving straight into the most important tasks, rather than starting with like clearing up, like cleaning up, which is, I would argue, not the most important task. But obviously, I mean, I am like, I don't always follow that rule myself, because sometimes I just leave my desk as it is, especially when I'm working from home. And then I start the next morning and I'm like, oh, I have to clean this up before I start working right
Like
now.
15 coffee cups.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Have you seen my my special coffee cup, by the way? I don't know if I debuted it on the
Oh, nice, man. You gotta
podcast.
catch them all.
Oh man, the millennial in me is like weeping of joy with
Oh,
this
man, I used to
Pokeball.
have like almost the whole collection of Pokemon cards um, back in the days. It's good time.
That's impressive. Back when there were only 151, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know who's the 151st?
That is Mew.
Yeah, or Mewtwo. I don't remember anymore, but yeah,
Mm.
the crazy one. Anyway, that's a
Yes.
good coffee cup, man. Very nice.
Thanks, man. That really brings joy to my everyday work. So
There you
that's
go. Productive
nice.
music, productive coffee cups.
Clutter-free workspace.
Yeah,
And
like you have to live in not sorry, not live, but like work in an environment that inspires you for good work, and then that brings you joy.
yeah, inspiration, and also beating interruptions and distractions, which are kind of the enemies of focus. So, like William James says in this quote, my experience is what I agree to attend to. So, I think that's just a really deep thing to consider.
So it's like what your experience is, whatever you choose to take out of it, your
Yeah,
interpretation.
I
Is
think,
that
yeah, I think we had a similar quote in the beginning of the podcast. So it's like what you focus on is what your life is. Like your experience in life is about what you focus your mind on. I think I just use synonyms to repeat that quote.
yeah, very zen, very zen.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. This is great.
Cool.
Great.
So that was the whole free to focus system, and I think it really fits in well with the first two frameworks that we ran through. So with getting things done, and maybe even more specifically to deep work, because focus and deep work are pretty interrelated. So this is the three-part productivity flywheel that we ran through in the podcast. So it starts with stopping. So formulating, evaluating, and rejuvenating. These are the three components of stopping. Cutting comes down to eliminating, automating, and delegating. And then finally, acting is all about consolidating, procrastinating, not really, but activating. let me just double check that now. Why is that saying procrastinate? I think it's designating, isn't it? So this is an interesting diagram. Good to know. But just as like a final slide here, the book also gives some kind of tips in terms of, so the first few chapters and what we've discussed so far has been very like theoretical, like what should you do generally? Like, oh, you want to stop, you want to cut, and you want to act. But the book also gives a few examples how you can start becoming free to focus. So the success path for free to focus has 11 steps. So just to run through these kind of quickly, we're talking about clearing the decks. So just like, yeah, as we said, like removing anything that's not like really necessarily the most important things we're working on. We're setting a baseline, so what we expect to get from our productivity. We're clarifying our objectives. So yeah, again, like what do we want to get from becoming productive? We're investing all this time. What do we want to get back? Finding true north. So finding what you're passionate and proficient in. Scheduling a margin, again, so that you don't have to be working every single second of the day. If your family or your friends come to visit, you can take like a 20-minute break and it's not the end of the world. You want to be able to enjoy life at the same time as you're being a productive person, because otherwise, what is the point of being human? You also want to prune the overgrowth, which, if I'm honest, I don't remember exactly what that meant. But yeah,
keep going.
Yeah, the other points are pretty straightforward. Stop thinking about it. You want to offload everything you can. You want to plan an ideal week. You want to design your week and day, and you want to beat interruptions and distractions. So I definitely recommend that anybody who's interested in learning how to focus, like becoming free to focus, I think you should buy this book. You should review like a bit more in depth than what we've discussed on this podcast, because it will be really informative. But yeah, I think this is like pretty much a summary of everything that's covered in the book. So if you found any of this interesting, I would recommend reading the book. And yeah, hopefully this has been informative and you can become a bit more free to focus with this.
For sure. And I would also recommend subscribing to our podcast if this is interesting, and give us a nice like for the video if you enjoyed it. That's it. I guess that's been us for today. And if there's any questions, I guess you can get in touch with us on the ClearSpace podcast, on YouTube, and any other medium you're seeing this today. That's it, I guess, unless you've got any comments, Nick? Jesper?
No, I think, yeah, just let us know if you have any questions or any comments. And I guess we'll see you in a few weeks with the next podcast episode.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.